The next step was to introduce the same approach to group work, collaboration and creativity into Zoe's science lessons, gradually reducing the structure and scaffolding as the weeks progressed. This was a challenge which lay at the heart of the team's research question.
Not that I misjudged my children, because I don't think the ideas I had before the project were negative. I don't think I was doing them a disservice. But I learned to just look more carefully and not to panic and not to be constrained by the classroom and noise levels. Because I think my misconception was that, you know, creative meant messy.
Listening out for your group number, because I'll also tell you where to go and sit.
I had these sort of deeper skills-based objectives, that's creative work, rather than creating a finished product, creating something they could hold or take away, or a piece of dance or a piece of music. It was actually about, you know, feeling successful at the end. And I think that's something that my children need to feel, very successful. They need to feel at the end that they've gone somewhere, which is something, that's probably the misconception. I didn't feel that they would want to do that. Sometimes I think they've been quite apathetic about learning and not being really bothered, but I think that's just because I haven't told them they could be and that they should be.
Zoe split everybody up into groups so that we could observe different working patterns. The activity was to calculate the elasticity of an elastic band when different weights were applied to it. Each group seemed to handle the challenges differently. The girls' group worked quietly and constructively, coming up with different ideas.
We could also use, as well as centimetres, millimetres. Yeah.
This group also made sure they contributed to the work equally.
Did she tell you what to put? No. We've all got to make contributions.
I did. I said 25 and 50.
And one of the focus children seemed to manage the group as a whole, guiding them through each process.
I liked the fact that before I wasn't so keen on science, but because of the creativity, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, right. But not just yet, because I only need 10 lines.
Do you think there's a gender difference? I mean, I was just watching Jodie and Chloe. They were still absolutely engaged, taking full responsibility in doing it.
I do think my boys' group, maybe they achieved quite a bit, but it was at a very slow pace, and it was very much, they didn't really talk and communicate. The girls did a lot of it, but it was very quiet and very kind of, you know, unseen. So I was watching very carefully to see if the communication was different. So I think it was, and I wonder if it is that group of boys. I'll try another group of boys.
It's just interesting when you put a group of boys together, because I was watching the 4 boys there, because Richard was in that group.
He was.
And he started off not really engaged at all. He started off not very engaged, but then actually he got quite engaged. Lewis was the one doing all the work. He was cutting
confidence, and he's very confident.
But the other 2 boys, I'm not sure of the names.
Jordan and Nathan Cheetham.
Yeah, well, they kind of didn't do very much. No. And then actually Richard got quite involved. So it was only a short time, but he then was quite involved with Lewis.
And interestingly enough, the 2 you mentioned are the more able scientists.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
But maybe not the more able inquirists or investigators.
So back off slightly. But then looking over it, Jade, he was absolutely in the thick of it. He was cutting and sticking. And
I tried to give him the low-key role where he was there just supporting. And he did do that, and then he tried to do quite a lot more as well.
At Doncaster Road, Lewis and Debbie soon realised that certain areas of the space were more engaging than others. Hidden cameras recorded not much activity in areas that didn't include painting and generally getting mucky. Even when Lewis tried to point out these areas to the children, they still didn't manage to take an interest. It seemed that unfamiliar stimuli or environments really hindered these children's creativity. Even when some children switched their attention to the clay pit, they decided to revert to the familiar and paint the clay.
There was a point where Owen was using sticks and sticking them in the paint, or using rocks and putting them in the paint, and he was kind of transferring all the different things that were in there and coming to his own conclusions about how he should and shouldn't use them, which I think was in his own way very creative, because he wasn't restricted by the boundaries of using a paintbrush to paint. Gently, Owen, gently.
Gently, Owen.
Nice and gently, that's it, good boy. No, do the other end, Owen. Alright, then that end. See if we can do it gently, that's it. I'm pretty sure that they didn't really pick up on that the visual things were kind of reference points for them to either draw or paint. It was just the activity of going in and painting, and the raw material was enough. I really like when you kind of have a sort of wet provision and it loosens things up, but then again I'm wondering whether they can have the same amount of sort of creative freedom with dry stuff. So charcoals and chalks and felt tip pens and other things, whether they can still have that freedom without it getting messy.